Welcome to Silent Queen's Reckoning. I'm so glad you could join us today. Now let's dive right into the story.
Chapter 1. Margaret Blackwood placed a check for $120 million on the tea table and told her daughter-in-law to leave before the twins were born. The room went silent. Not because of the money. In the Blackwood family, money was usually discussed with the boredom other people reserved for weather. The silence came from the way Margaret said it, soft and polished, as if she were offering condolences at a funeral instead of buying a living wife out of her own marriage. Sophia Blackwood looked at the check without touching it. $120 million. Printed neatly. Signed already. Made payable to Sophia Elise Blackwood. Across from her, Margaret sat with perfect posture in a pale blue suit, silver hair pinned into an elegant twist, pearls at her throat, expression tender enough for witnesses and cold enough for truth. Beside the fireplace stood Nathaniel Blackwood, Sophia's husband, the billionaire heir to Blackwood Atlas Group, a man who could command acquisition rooms without raising his voice and apparently could not look his wife in the eye. Near the window, his secretary held both hands over her stomach. Clara Voss was 26, blonde, fragile, and visibly pregnant beneath a cream knit dress. The swell of her belly was not large yet, but the room had arranged itself around it like a shrine. Her lashes trembled. Her mouth stayed parted in a performance of innocent fear. Every few seconds, her fingers moved protectively over the place where Margaret Blackwood's future heirs were supposedly growing. Twins. That was the word Nathaniel had used 15 minutes earlier, after asking Sophia to sit down. Clara is pregnant. Sophia had not moved. With twins. Margaret had clasped her hands as if receiving a blessing. Now the check sat between them like a verdict. "You have always been graceful," Margaret said. "That is why I believe you will understand what must happen." Sophia raised her eyes. "What must happen?" Nathaniel shifted. He wore a charcoal suit, his tie loosened, his handsome face drawn with exhaustion. To anyone else, he might have looked tortured. Sophia had learned the difference between pain and inconvenience. Margaret leaned forward. "The family needs stability. Clara's pregnancy changes the future. 2 children, Sophia. 2 Blackwood heirs. They cannot be born into scandal." Sophia looked at Clara. Then perhaps their father should have avoided creating one. Clara flinched as if struck. Nathaniel's jaw tightened. "Do not attack her." There it was. 3 words. Clean. Instinctive. Revealing. Sophia smiled faintly. "I said one sentence. She is pregnant." "I heard." Margaret lifted one hand. "This is precisely why we are trying to handle matters privately. No public scenes. No lawsuits. No ugly headlines. You accept the settlement, file quietly, and allow Nathaniel to prepare a proper household for his children." "His children?" Margaret's expression did not change. "Yes." Sophia looked at her husband. "And you agree?" Nathaniel finally met her gaze. His eyes were gray, the same color that once looked gentle in morning light. When Sophia married him 8 years earlier, those eyes had made her believe loneliness could be cured by being chosen. He had been brilliant, wounded by his father's expectations, and hungry for a softer place to rest. She had given him that place. She had helped him build the Blackwood expansion model, hosted investors, softened board enemies, and signed documents he never fully read because he trusted her then. Now he looked at her like a difficult clause. "I think this is the cleanest way," he said. "Cleanest." Sophia repeated the word silently. Clara looked down at her stomach. A tear slid over one cheek. "I never wanted to hurt anyone." Sophia turned toward her. "Then why are you standing in my living room?" Color rose in Clara's face. Margaret's voice sharpened beneath its silk. "Sophia." The living room belonged to Sophia as much as anyone, though the Blackwoods rarely remembered that. She had chosen the antique green rug, the linen curtains, the walnut shelves. She had restored the old townhouse after Margaret called it drafty and impractical. She had turned it into a home when Nathaniel still claimed he hated the coldness of his mother's estate. Now they had brought his pregnant secretary into that home to watch Sophia be purchased out of it. Nathaniel stepped closer. "Please, let us not turn this into cruelty." Sophia looked at him. "You brought your secretary here carrying twins, and let your mother offer me a check." He closed his eyes briefly. "I know this hurts." That almost made her laugh. Hurts was a stubbed toe. A missed call. A friend forgetting a birthday. This was architecture. A betrayal designed with seating arrangements. Sophia picked up the check. Margaret's shoulders relaxed slightly. Clara's eyes brightened with something she tried to hide. Nathaniel watched Sophia's hands, perhaps hoping money would do what affection no longer could. Sophia studied the signature. 120 million, she said. Margaret nodded. A generous settlement. For 8 years of marriage? For discretion. For silence. For dignity, Margaret corrected. Sophia looked up. Dignity cannot be bought from the person who still has it. The room changed. Margaret's face cooled. Nathaniel stiffened. Clara's hand tightened over her stomach. Sophia placed the check back on the table, aligning it carefully with the edge. I will not sign anything tonight. Nathaniel exhaled. Sophia. And Clara should sit down, Sophia continued. If she is carrying twins, standing through a family negotiation seems unnecessary. Clara blinked, confused by the kindness. Margaret recovered first. We expected resistance. I understand pride. No, Sophia said. You understand purchase. Margaret stood. The pearls at her throat glowed under the lamplight. Be careful. The Blackwood name can protect you, but it can also close every door you think you have. Sophia rose too. She was not as tall as Margaret, not as theatrical, not as obviously powerful. She wore a soft gray dress, her dark brown hair tied at the nape of her neck, her wedding ring still on her finger. To the people in this room, she looked like a wife being discarded. That was their first mistake. Margaret, she said, you should speak to your lawyers before threatening me. Margaret's eyes narrowed. My lawyers prepared the check. Then speak to better ones. Nathaniel stared at her. For the first time that evening, unease crossed his face. Sophia turned to Clara. Congratulations on the twins. You should ask for independent medical care, independent counsel, and a written support agreement before this family starts calling your children assets. Clara's mouth parted. Nathaniel snapped, enough. Sophia looked at him, calm as a closed file. No, she said. Enough was before you turned fatherhood into a merger announcement. Chapter 2. Sophia did not sleep that night. She did not cry either, though she would have forgiven herself if she had. Instead, she sat in the library with the door locked, a cashmere blanket over her knees, and every major Blackwood Atlas agreement from the last decade open across the long oak table. The house was quiet. Nathaniel had left with Margaret and Clara after realizing Sophia would not perform the breakdown they needed. He had texted at midnight. We need to talk when you are calmer. She had not answered. Calmer was a word men used when a woman stopped being useful. At 2 a.m, Sophia opened the family trust agreement. The Blackwoods believed power belonged to blood. They said it at dinners, at board retreats, at weddings where old women in diamonds studied younger women like breeding prospects. Margaret had built her life around the idea that the Blackwood line must continue through sons, heirs, portraits, and controlled marriages. That was why Clara's twins mattered. Not because they were children, because Margaret thought they were leverage. Sophia turned to the inheritance provisions. There it was. Section 11. Any child legally recognized by a Blackwood descendant could inherit, but voting control over Blackwood Atlas Group remained bound to the guardian steward provision until the youngest recognized heir reached 25. The guardian steward was not automatically the biological parent. It was the person named in the continuity instrument executed by the previous controlling chairman. Nathaniel's late father, Arthur Blackwood, had named Sophia. Not Nathaniel. Not Margaret. Sophia. Arthur had done it 4 years earlier after a board crisis nearly exposed Nathaniel's reckless side deal in Dubai. Sophia had resolved it privately, preserved the company, and refused credit. Arthur had called her into his study afterward and said, My son has ambition. You have judgment. Empires need the second more than the first. Sophia had not told Nathaniel. Arthur had advised against it. He will either be grateful or humiliated, Arthur had said, and I do not trust him to choose gratitude. Sophia had hated that sentence then. Now it sat in the room like prophecy. She opened the next file, the shareholder covenant from Blackwood Atlas's private restructuring. Margaret and Nathaniel had forgotten another detail. When Blackwood Atlas nearly lost its European logistics arm 5 years earlier, Sophia had arranged rescue capital through a discreet family office called Ellery Stone. The official investor was external. The beneficial owner was Sophia's maternal trust. Like many quiet women born into old money, Sophia had learned young that the safest power was the kind people only noticed after insulting it. Ellery Stone held convertible debt, board observation rights, and a default trigger if Blackwood Atlas attempted related party asset transfer, fraudulent settlement, or leadership action that created reputational damage affecting major financing. A public mistress pregnant with twins did not automatically qualify. A mother-in-law offering $120 million from a company-linked liquidity reserved to force the legal spouse to disappear might. Sophia took out her phone and called Daniel Rook, her attorney. He answered on the third ring, voice rough with sleep. Sophia? I need emergency review. Is Nathaniel hurt? No. Are you? She looked at the check lying beside the trust agreement. Not in a way that requires a doctor. Daniel's tone changed. Tell me. She did. When she finished, he was fully awake. Do not touch the check again, he said. Photograph it. Send me the image. Preserve all messages. Did anyone say where the funds originate? Margaret called it family liquidity. That can mean anything. With Margaret, it usually means something she hopes no one audits. I will pull filings and internal references. Do you want a marital filing prepared? Sophia looked toward the dark hallway beyond the library door. 8 years of marriage lived in that house. Nathaniel laughing barefoot in the kitchen. Nathaniel falling asleep with his head in her lap after hostile board meetings. Nathaniel whispering that Sophia was the only person who saw him without the Blackwood armor. Memory tried to open a door. Truth locked it. Yes, she said. But not filed yet. Strategy? Tonight they tried private humiliation. I want to know what public story they are preparing. Daniel site. That sounds like Margaret. Also verify Arthur's guardian steward provision. There was a pause. You think they forgot? I think they never knew. Nathaniel did not read it? Nathaniel reads summaries written by people he already believes. Daniel's voice sharpened with professional interest. If Clara's twins are recognized and the company faces continuity risk, your authority may increase, not decrease. Exactly. That means Margaret just paid you to leave a room you may legally control. Sophia looked again at the check. For the first time all night, she smiled. Yes, she said. That is what makes it rude. Chapter 3 Nathaniel Blackwood spent the morning after the check convincing himself Sophia would take the money. It was easier than admitting she had frightened him. He stood in his office on the 56th floor of Blackwood Atlas Tower, looking down at Manhattan with a coffee he had not touched. His reflection in the window looked controlled. Dark hair, gray eyes, tailored navy suit, the public face of a man praised in magazines for modernizing an old empire. Underneath, his nerves moved like exposed wires. Sophia had not called. She always answered eventually. Not because she was weak, but because she believed problems became worse when ignored. That had been one of her most useful qualities. She could be hurt and still organize a solution. Angry and still read a contract. Exhausted and still sit beside him in a boardroom, passing him notes that saved him from his own impatience. He had mistaken that reliability for permanence. His office door opened. Clara entered with a tray she did not need to carry. She had been promoted out of administrative work weeks ago, but she still performed small acts of care around him because she knew how much he liked feeling needed. You didn't eat, she said. Nathaniel turned from the window. I'm not hungry. Clara set the tray on the side table and approached slowly. Her cream blouse skimmed her stomach. She looked softer in daylight, less theatrical than she had in Sophia's living room. Fear had replaced triumph. Did she call? Clara asked. No. Clara bit her lip. Maybe that's good. Nathaniel almost laughed. With Sophia, silence is rarely good. The words came out too honestly. Clara heard it. Her face changed. You sound like you admire her. I know her. Do you still love her? He looked away too quickly. Clara's eyes filled. Nathaniel. He rubbed his forehead. This is not the morning for that. It is exactly the morning for that. I am carrying your children. Your mother told me you were done with Sophia. You told me the marriage was only legal. He closed his eyes. Only legal. He had said that in a hotel room in Chicago while Clara cried because she hated hiding. At the time, it felt close enough to truth. He and Sophia had not shared a bed in months. Their conversations had become efficient. She watched him with a distance he resented, because it suggested she saw more than he wanted known. But legal was not a technicality when fortunes, houses, inheritance, and children stood behind it. His phone rang. Margaret. He answered on speaker because Clara was already watching him like a verdict. Did she reach out? Margaret asked. No. Then we pressured gently. I have arranged for a society item to mention your separation. Nathaniel straightened. Mother. Do not use that tone. The narrative must be set before Sophia creates one. Clara whispered. Narrative? Margaret heard her. Clara, darling, do not worry. We will protect you and the twins. Nathaniel walked to his desk. What exactly did you tell the columnist? Nothing false. That you and Sophia have been living separate lives. That the family is preparing for joyful news. That Sophia will be treated generously. His stomach tightened. Do not publish anything yet. It is already scheduled. Cancel it. Nathaniel, weakness now will cost us. I said cancel it. There was silence. Margaret was not used to being challenged by her son before noon. Did Sophia say something to you? She asked. No. That's the problem. Margaret's voice cooled. She is a lawyer with wounded pride. Do not mythologize her. Nathaniel looked at the framed photograph on his desk. Sophia at Lake Como 3 summers earlier, hair loose in the wind, laughing at something he said. He had kept the photo because it made him look like a man capable of being loved without performance. You offered her $120 million in front of Clara, he said quietly. A clean solution. A provocation. She is barren, Nathaniel. The word hit the office like ice. Clara looked down. Nathaniel's hand tightened around the phone. Do not say that again. Margaret did not apologize. She has given the family no heir. Clara has. That is reality. Nathaniel ended the call. The office went quiet. Clara touched her stomach. She really couldn't have children? Nathaniel looked at her sharply. That is not something you discuss. But your mother said. My mother says what helps her win. Clara stepped back, eyes wounded. And what do you say? Nathaniel had no clean answer. Before he found one, his assistant called through the desk line. Mr. Blackwood, Daniel Rook's office just sent preservation notices to corporate counsel, family counsel, and the trust administrators. Nathaniel went still. Clara whispered, What does that mean? Nathaniel stared at the city below. It meant Sophia had stopped being a wife in pain and become counsel with standing. It meant the check had not bought silence. It had purchased war. Chapter 4 Margaret Blackwood had built her reputation by smiling while other people discovered she had already won. By noon, the smile was gone. She sat in her private office at the Blackwood estate, a limestone mansion overlooking the Hudson, surrounded by portraits of dead men whose wealth she had spent her life defending. Her personal attorney, Graham Pell, stood near the desk with a tablet. He had the pale, anxious look of a man reading bad news to someone who believed bad news was disloyal. Explain it again, Margaret said. Graham cleared his throat. Daniel Rook has issued preservation demands related to the check, the funding source, communications regarding Ms. Voss's pregnancy, proposed divorce terms, and any discussion of Mrs. Blackwood's removal from residence or governance interests. Governance interests? Yes. Sophia has no governance interests in Blackwood Atlas. Graham hesitated. Margaret saw it and hated him for it. Say it. She may. The room seemed to harden. Margaret leaned back slowly. Through what? Ellery Stone. She stared at him. Ellery Stone is a financing partner. It appears to be controlled by a trust connected to Mrs. Blackwood. For several seconds, Margaret did not move. Then she laughed once, not because it was funny, but because rage needed a shape. Impossible. Graham said nothing. Arthur would have told me. Still nothing. Margaret's face changed. Arthur. Her late husband had been many things, proud, strategic, capable of cruelty when necessary. But near the end, he had become intolerably fond of Sophia. He called her steady. He asked for her opinion. He trusted her in rooms where Margaret believed blood should have been enough. What else? Margaret asked. Graham looked as though he would rather resign. There is a guardian steward provision in Arthur's continuity instrument. I know the trust. This provision is separate from the general family distribution schedule. It names Mrs. Blackwood as interim steward over certain voting and continuity rights if Nathaniel has recognized minor heirs and the company faces governance instability. Margaret rose. No. Graham lowered his tablet. It was executed 4 years ago. No. Witnessed by 2 independent counsel. Margaret's hand struck the desk. A porcelain paperweight rattled. Arthur gave Sophia control over my grandchildren's inheritance? Not direct inheritance. Stewardship oversight. Do not decorate the knife. Graham wisely stopped speaking. Margaret turned toward the window. The estate gardens were winter bare, all clipped hedges and cold stone. She had spent decades believing she understood the architecture of Blackwood power. Men inherited, women preserved, outsiders were tested, and wives without children remained guests no matter how long they stayed. Arthur had changed the locks without telling her. Because of Sophia. The door opened. Rebecca Blackwood entered without knocking. She was Nathaniel's younger sister, 32, sharp-featured, stylish, and permanently irritated by any woman praised more than herself. "Mother, what is happening? Nathaniel is ignoring my calls." Margaret did not turn. "Sophia is making trouble." Rebecca rolled her eyes. "Of course she is. I told you we should have offered less." 120 million made her feel important. Graham looked down at the floor. Margaret faced her daughter. "Sophia may control Ellery Stone." Rebecca stopped. "What?" "And your father named her in a continuity instrument." Rebecca's mouth opened, then closed. For once, she looked like a child who had discovered adults had secrets. "Why would he do that?" she whispered. Margaret's voice went flat. "Because he forgot his wife was still alive." Rebecca sank into a chair. "Can we challenge it?" Graham answered carefully. "Potentially. But if the document is valid, attacking it may force disclosure of why Arthur believed the provision necessary." Margaret's eyes narrowed. "Which means?" "It may reopen the Dubai matter." Rebecca looked up quickly. "Nathaniel's side deal?" Graham did not answer. He did not need to. Margaret closed her eyes. The Dubai matter had nearly destroyed Nathaniel's credibility with the board. Sophia had fixed it. Quietly. Too quietly, apparently. Margaret had assumed the crisis disappeared because the Blackwood name commanded loyalty. It had disappeared because Sophia had buried it. Rebecca stood, anger rising to cover fear. "Then we go after her personally. Leak that she manipulated Dad. Leak that she could not have children and resented Clara. People will understand." Graham winced. Margaret looked at her daughter. "Do not speak like a fool in front of counsel." Rebecca flushed. "I'm trying to help." "Then be quiet." Margaret turned back to Graham. "Find a weakness." "In Sophia?" "In every document she thinks protects her." He nodded. After he left, Rebecca crossed her arms. "Mother, what if Clara's twins give Sophia more power instead of less?" Margaret looked at the portrait of Arthur above the mantel. For the first time in years, she hated a dead man. "Then," she said, "we make sure Sophia never becomes necessary." Chapter 5. Sophia met Clara 3 days later, in a private medical clinic lobby. It was not planned. Sophia had come for her own appointment, one she had scheduled before the check, before the twins, before her marriage turned into a board problem. Clara sat near the window wearing a camel coat too large for her shoulders, staring at a consent form with both hands trembling. When she saw Sophia, her face went white. "Mrs. Blackwood." Sophia paused. Clara looked around as if searching for Nathaniel, Margaret, or any person who could tell her what role to play. There was no one. Only a quiet lobby, soft music, and a nurse behind frosted glass. "Clara," Sophia said. The younger woman stood too quickly, then winced and pressed a hand to her stomach. Sophia's instinct moved before her anger did. "Sit." Clara obeyed, embarrassed. Sophia sat 2 chairs away, leaving space between them. For a minute, neither spoke. Then Clara said, "I did not know you would be here." "I assumed that. I can reschedule. You are pregnant with twins. You should keep your appointment." Clara blinked rapidly. "You are very calm. People keep saying that like an accusation." "I mean," Clara swallowed. "If I were you, I would hate me." Sophia looked at her. "Do you want me to?" The question unsettled Clara more than anger would have. She looked down at the consent form. "I do not know what I want." It was the first honest thing Sophia had heard from her. The nurse called another patient. The lobby settled again. Clara whispered, "Margaret wants me to sign something." Sophia's attention sharpened. "What?" "A prenatal family protection agreement." That is what she called it. She said it guarantees support, housing, medical care, trust funds after birth. Clara's fingers tightened on the paper. "But it also says the children will be raised under Blackwood family supervision if I am considered unstable." Sophia closed her eyes for one brief second. There it was. Margaret had moved from buying out the wife to containing the mistress. "Did you bring it?" Sophia asked. Clara hesitated. "Clara, I am not your friend. But I am not Margaret. If you sign something you do not understand, you will regret it." The younger woman reached into her bag and pulled out a folded packet. Sophia accepted it and read the first page. Her jaw tightened. The agreement was worse than expected. It granted generous financial support, but the conditions allowed the Blackwood Family Trust to seek custody control if Clara violated moral conduct provisions, discussed family matters publicly, entered relationships deemed harmful to the children, or failed to follow approved medical and security protocols. In plain language, Margaret intended to own the babies and manage Clara as a visitor. Sophia handed it back. Do not sign this. Clara's eyes filled. Nathaniel said it was standard. Nathaniel says standard when he has not read. He would not take my children. Sophia looked at her. He let his mother offer me money to disappear while you stood in my living room. Clara's face crumpled. The words were cruel only because they were true. I loved him, Clara whispered. Sophia looked away. There were many things she could have said. That love did not justify harm. That wanting to be chosen did not erase another woman's existence. That Clara had enjoyed the replacement fantasy until the contract turned toward her. Instead, Sophia said, get your own attorney. I cannot afford the kind of lawyer they have. There are attorneys who handle high-conflict family and trust matters. I can give you 3 names. They do not work for me. Clara stared at her. Why would you help me? I am not helping you win. I am helping prevent 2 children from becoming collateral. Clara touched her stomach with both hands. You believe they are Nathaniel's? Are they? Tears slipped down Clara's face. Yes. Sophia studied her. Then paternity will confirm it. Clara flinched at the practicality. I'm not lying, she said. Then verification protects you. The nurse appeared at the doorway. Ms. Voss. Clara stood slowly. Before following the nurse, she looked back. Mrs. Blackwood. Yes. Margaret said you were barren. Sophia did not move. Clara's face twisted with shame. I am sorry. I believed her. For a moment, the lobby seemed too bright. Sophia placed one hand over the folder in her lap. Inside were her own test results, appointment notes, and a sonogram image, so early it still looked more like a secret than a child. She looked at Clara, at the young woman carrying twins and learning too late that being chosen by powerful people often meant being trapped by them. Margaret says many things, Sophia said. Clara's eyes lowered to Sophia's folder. Understanding flickered. Sophia did not confirm it. Some truths deserve protection until they were strong enough to stand in daylight. Chapter 6. Nathaniel learned about Sophia's pregnancy from a security report. That was the part that would later shame him most. Not because he had betrayed her. Not because he had allowed his mother to call her barren. Not because he had brought Clara into their living room like a replacement already approved by committee. Because the first proof that his wife was carrying his child came from a private security contractor Margaret had hired to track Sophia's movements. The report landed in his email at 6:42 p.m. Subject: Mrs. Blackwood clinic visit. Nathaniel almost deleted it. Then he opened the attachment and saw Sophia entering a maternal medicine clinic. He saw the appointment classification. He saw the note from a careless subcontractor who had bribed no one but had observed enough. Possible pregnancy-related consultation. His hands went cold. He called Sophia. She did not answer. He called again. Nothing. At the third call, Daniel Rook answered. Nathaniel. Nathaniel stood in his office, heart pounding. Where is my wife? Safe. Is she pregnant? There was a pause. Daniel's voice cooled. I suggest you put all communications in writing through counsel. Daniel, do not play games with me. You lost the privilege of informal access when your mother hired surveillance. Nathaniel went still. I did not authorize that. Then your family has a governance problem and a privacy problem. Is she pregnant? Nathaniel repeated, lower now. Ask your attorney what discovery entitles you to and what decency does not. The call ended. Nathaniel threw the phone onto his desk. It skidded into a stack of acquisition papers and knocked over a silver pen holder. For a few seconds, he stood breathing hard, feeling the entire room press inward. Sophia pregnant. The thought would not settle. For years, pregnancy had been the unsaid wound between them. They had tried quietly in the beginning, then irregularly, then not at all. Sophia had attended appointments alone after Nathaniel missed 2 because of board crises. He had told himself she preferred privacy. She had told him nothing, and he had let nothing become comfort. Then Clara happened. Clara, who looked at him as if he were not failing. Clara, who cried when he left hotel rooms. Clara, who said she wanted his children and made it sound like devotion rather than pressure. When she became pregnant, Nathaniel felt terror first, then relief so ugly he never admitted it. An heir. Proof. A future no one could call stalled. Now Sophia might be carrying his child too. And his mother had tried to buy her out before knowing. Or worse, before caring. His office door opened. Margaret entered without waiting. Did you receive the report? She asked. Nathaniel turned slowly. You had my wife followed. I had a potential threat monitored. She is my wife. A wife who is positioning herself against this family. Because we gave her reason. Margaret's eyes narrowed. Do not become sentimental because of a clinic visit. We do not know what it means. It means you invaded her privacy. It means Sophia may attempt to complicate succession. Nathaniel stared at his mother. Complicate? Margaret removed her gloves. If she is pregnant, we verify paternity and timing. He flinched. Do not look offended, she said. You know how these matters work. I know Sophia. Do you? Margaret asked. Because you did not know she controlled Ellery Stone. You did not know your father named her steward. You did not know she had enough legal standing to freeze half our options in 72 hours. Each sentence landed with precision. Nathaniel looked away first. Margaret's voice softened, which made it more dangerous. Sophia has been underestimated. That does not make her innocent. Innocent of what? Being smarter than us? Margaret's mouth tightened. Of planning. Mother. She sat beside you for years, quietly holding documents that could displace us. You think that is love? Nathaniel thought of Sophia in the library at midnight, reading contracts because he was too exhausted. Sophia at his father's bedside. Sophia across board tables, passing him notes. Sophia telling him after Dubai, you cannot keep treating risk as proof of courage. He had resented her then, because she was right. Yes, he said quietly. I think it was. Margaret looked at him as if he had disappointed her beyond repair. Then love has made you stupid. Nathaniel laughed once, bitterly. No. Pride did that. Chapter 7 The Society article appeared the next morning. Blackwood family prepares for new generation amid quiet marital transition. It was elegant poison. The article described Nathaniel and Sophia as having lived separate lives for years. It called Clara Voss a trusted executive aide and close family companion. It hinted at joyful news expected soon. It praised Margaret's discretion and mentioned that Sophia, known for her reserved public style, would be treated with extraordinary generosity. It did not mention twins. It did not mention the check. It did not mention the secretary standing in Sophia's living room while Margaret tried to buy her silence. By noon, Sophia's legal team filed a sealed motion and an open statement. The statement was only 5 sentences. Mrs. Sophia Blackwood has not authorized any public characterization of her marriage, residence, medical status, or legal position. Reports suggesting a negotiated departure are false. Mrs. Blackwood has preserved all rights related to marriage, property, trust governance, and corporate matters. Any attempt to pressure witnesses, beneficiaries, employees, or expectant parents connected to the Blackwood family will be addressed through counsel. Privacy is requested for all unborn children implicated by recent events. The last sentence changed the story. All unborn children. By 3, the gossip sites were hunting. By 5, Blackwood Atlas shares slid 2%. By 6, the board requested an emergency governance briefing. Sophia attended remotely from Daniel Rook's office. She wore a dark green blazer and no jewelry except her wedding ring. Her face appeared on the conference screen before 12 directors, Nathaniel, Margaret, corporate counsel, and the board secretary. Margaret stared at Sophia's image with barely concealed hatred. Nathaniel looked tired and shaken. The board chair, Helena Cross, opened the meeting. We are not here to litigate a marriage. We are here because potential trust, succession, and financing issues may affect Blackwood Atlas. Sophia nodded. Agreed. Margaret spoke before anyone else could. Then Mrs. Blackwood's personal filings are irrelevant. Daniel Rook leaned into frame. They are relevant if family actions intersect with corporate liquidity, trust control, or coercive settlement funded by company-adjacent reserves. Corporate counsel shifted uncomfortably. Helena looked at Margaret. Was the proposed $120 million payment sourced from personal funds? Margaret's chin lifted. Family funds. That is not an answer. The Blackwood family office maintains liquidity. Sophia spoke calmly. The check was drawn from a Blackwood legacy account pledged in part to support executive continuity obligations. The room went still. Nathaniel looked at his mother. Margaret did not look back. Helena turned to corporate counsel. Is that accurate? Counsel hesitated. Preliminarily, the account is connected to family office assets, but has cross-collateral relevance under certain agreements. One director muttered, Jesus. Margaret's face hardened. This is being exaggerated. Sophia said, I have no interest in exaggeration. The check exists. The meeting occurred. Clara Voss was present. The proposed payment was offered in exchange for my quiet departure after Ms. Voss's pregnancy with twins was disclosed. The words twins entered the boardroom like an alarm. Helena removed her glasses. Ms. Voss is pregnant with twins? Nathaniel answered, voice low. Yes. Another director asked, and paternity? Nathaniel's jaw tightened. I am the father. Sophia did not react. Her stillness made the directors look at her more carefully. Helena said, Mrs. Blackwood, your statement referenced unborn children plural beyond Ms. Voss. Are you making a medical disclosure? Daniel began. My client is not required. Sophia lifted one hand slightly. Daniel stopped. She looked directly at Nathaniel through the screen. I am pregnant. No one spoke. Nathaniel closed his eyes. Margaret's hand froze around her pen. Sophia continued. I had intended to disclose it privately before my husband's affair, Ms. Voss's pregnancy, and the proposed buyout were presented to me as a completed family decision. Helena's expression turned severe. This creates significant continuity concerns. Margaret snapped, or convenient timing. Nathaniel's head turned. Mother. Sophia's face remained composed, but something in her eyes cooled so sharply that even Helena noticed. Daniel leaned forward. Mrs. Blackwood has medical documentation and will comply with lawful, appropriate procedures. Any insinuation made for intimidation will be added to our record. Margaret sat back, lips pressed thin. Sophia said, Let us be clear. I do not intend to use any child as leverage. I am here because others already did. The board secretary stopped typing for half a second, then resumed. Helena nodded slowly. Then we will commission independent review of the relevant trust provisions, financing triggers, and family office account usage. Until complete, no settlement payment, succession arrangement, or governance modification involving minor heirs will proceed without board notice. Margaret's voice was ice. The board has no authority over family reproduction. Helena met her gaze. No, but it has authority over corporate instability caused by family misconduct. For the first time in Sophia's memory, Margaret Blackwood had no immediate answer. Chapter 8. Clara Voss moved out of the company apartment 2 days after the board meeting. She did it quietly, with a lawyer Daniel had recommended, and a private security service Nathaniel did not control. The apartment had been beautiful in the way expensive temporary spaces were beautiful. Cream furniture, river view, fresh flowers, no history. Clara packed 2 suitcases, a folder of medical records, and the small silver baby rattle Margaret had given her after calling her the future of the family. She left the rattle on the kitchen counter. Nathaniel arrived as she was waiting for the elevator. Clara. She turned, startled. Her lawyer, a calm woman named Priya's son, stepped slightly closer. Nathaniel looked at the suitcases, then at Clara's face. You are leaving? Clara's hand moved to her stomach. Yes. Where? Priya answered. A safe location. Nathaniel's eyes hardened. I am not a threat. Clara flinched. Priya said, Then you will respect boundaries. Nathaniel looked at Clara. Did Sophia put you up to this? Something in Clara's face changed. Not anger. Disappointment. You really think every woman in this story is being controlled by another woman except the one you want to control, she said. Nathaniel stared at her. Clara's voice shook, but she kept going. Sophia told me to get my own lawyer. That is all. Your mother gave me a contract that could take my children if I became inconvenient. You told me it was standard. He looked away. Did you read it? She asked. His silence answered. Clara laughed softly, miserably. Of course. I would not let her take your children. You let her call your wife barren. The word struck him. You let her offer money to erase Sophia. You let me stand there while it happened. I thought it meant I was loved. Now I think it meant I was next. Nathaniel stepped closer. Clara, I made mistakes. Priya said, Mr. Blackwood. He stopped. Clara's eyes filled. I loved you because you seemed powerful. Then I realized power in your family is mostly people being too afraid to say no to your mother. The elevator opened. Nathaniel's face tightened with pain and pride, both too late to be useful. They are my children, he said. Clara nodded. Then become someone they can safely know. She entered the elevator with Priya. The doors closed. Nathaniel stood alone in the hall of the apartment he had used to hide a woman who was now hiding from him. His phone buzzed. Sophia. For a second, hope lifted in his chest. Then he opened the message. All future communication regarding me, or the pregnancy, must go through counsel. Do not contact my doctors. Do not send security. Do not come to the house without written notice. He read it 3 times. Then another message appeared. I am changing the locks. Chapter 9. The Blackwood townhouse became quiet after the locks changed. Not empty. Not dead. Quiet. Sophia spent the first evening walking through each room and removing the objects that belonged more to performance than memory. Nathaniel's framed magazine covers went into storage. Margaret's gifted silver candlesticks went into a box for return. The photographs from formal galas remained, but only because Sophia wanted to decide later whether history should be preserved or released. In the library, she found a note Arthur had written years earlier tucked inside an old annual report. Sophia, if Nathaniel is wise, he will ask your advice before he needs rescue. If he is foolish, make sure the company survives the lesson. She sat with the note for a long time. Arthur had known his son better than anyone wanted to admit. That knowledge did not make him innocent. He had built the Blackwood machine that made Nathaniel hungry and Margaret ruthless. But near the end, he had tried to install one ethical break. Sophia wondered if she had mistaken being named a steward for being valued as family. The next morning, Daniel arrived with a full briefing team. Julia Hart, forensic accountant. Mason Vale, trust litigator. Elise Monroe, communications strategist. They spread documents across Sophia's dining table and began turning humiliation into procedure. Julia traced the $120 million check. The funds were drawn from Blackwood legacy liquidity, she said. Technically family office, but cross-referenced in several corporate stability agreements. Using it for personal spousal removal creates serious disclosure issues. Mason reviewed the guardian steward clause. Strong language. Arthur anticipated minor errors and governance instability. Margaret can challenge, but she risks discovery into why Arthur bypassed her and Nathaniel. Elise handled media. We do not respond emotionally. We position Sophia as protecting privacy, children, and corporate stability. No attacks on Clara. No insults. No details about pregnancy unless legally necessary. Sophia nodded. Daniel watched her from across the table. You understand this will get uglier? Yes. Margaret will try to make you look calculating. I am calculating. Elise smiled. That is not the quote. Sophia almost laughed. Daniel continued. Nathaniel may try remorse. The room quieted slightly. Sophia looked down at Arthur's note, now sealed in a protective sleeve. Remorse is not a strategy, she said. At 4 that afternoon, Nathaniel's remorse arrived in the form of flowers. White roses. 40 of them. A handwritten card. Sophia, I am sorry for everything. Please let me see you. I need to know you and the baby are safe. Sophia read the card once. Then she handed it to Daniel. Scan it. Log it. Return the flowers. Elise raised an eyebrow. No reply? Sophia looked toward the foyer where the roses stood like a very expensive apology trying to enter without permission. He knows I am safe, she said. He wants to know whether he still has access. The flowers were returned within the hour. That evening, Nathaniel called Daniel, furious. Daniel put the call on speaker with Sophia's permission. She returned flowers? Nathaniel demanded. Yes. They were not a legal threat. Neither is a locked door. Nathaniel inhaled sharply. I need to speak to my wife. Sophia listened from the other side of the table, one hand resting gently on her stomach. Daniel said, You may submit a written request. This is insane. She is pregnant with my child. And entitled to medical privacy, emotional safety, and legal counsel. Daniel, tell her I love her. The room went still. Sophia closed her eyes. There it was. The sentence she had wanted for months, arriving after another woman carried his twins and his mother tried to buy her out. Daniel looked at her. Sophia shook her head once. Daniel said, Good evening, Nathaniel. He ended the call. Sophia opened her eyes. For one moment, pain crossed her face so openly that everyone at the table looked away. Then she straightened the documents before her. Continue, she said. Chapter 10. Margaret's counterattack began at a luncheon. It was always going to begin at a luncheon. She invited 12 women to the Blackwood estate. Trustees, wives of directors, 2 museum patrons, 1 retired judge, and a columnist who pretended she was only there for charity planning. The table was set with ivory china and winter flowers. Clara was absent. Sophia was not invited. That absence was the point. Margaret waited until dessert to sigh. I only hope the children are protected, she said. The retired judge glanced at her. Children? Margaret's mouth tightened delicately. I should not speak. The columnist leaned in. Margaret, you know discretion is safe here. It was not. Everyone knew that. Margaret counted on it. There are pregnancies involved, Margaret said softly. Real lives. Fragile futures. And unfortunately, certain adults see unborn children as instruments of control. One trustee's wife murmured, "How awful." Margaret lowered her eyes. I blame myself. I welcomed Sophia into the family despite concerns. She is intelligent, of course. Very intelligent. But warmth cannot be taught. By evening, the phrase had traveled. Warmth cannot be taught. By morning, it appeared in a blind item about a cold society wife using legal maneuvers against an expectant mother of twins. By noon, Sophia's team had the source chain. Elise looked almost delighted. She is predictable. Sophia read the blind item without expression. Daniel said, "We can ignore it." "No," Sophia said. "Not this one." He looked at her. She is using Clara and the twins as sympathy, while trying to control them privately. Release the prenatal agreement. Elise sat straighter. Redacted? Names protected where necessary. Leave the custody control language visible. Daniel nodded slowly. That shifts the narrative. It tells the truth. Within 4 hours, the public story changed again. The cold wife became the woman who warned the pregnant secretary not to sign away custody rights. The benevolent mother-in-law became the matriarch whose agreement allowed family supervision over Clara's children if she failed moral conduct standards. Clara's attorney released a one-sentence statement. Ms. Voss is represented independently and will make decisions regarding her pregnancy and children free from coercion by any family member, employer, or spouse. The word spouse was not accidental. Nathaniel saw the statement during a board preparation meeting and went pale. Margaret saw it at the estate and threw a porcelain cup against the fireplace. Rebecca called it betrayal. Sophia called it Tuesday. That evening, Margaret came to the townhouse. She arrived without notice, which meant she was stopped at the new security desk Sophia had installed in the vestibule. The guard called upstairs. Sophia looked at the camera feed and saw Margaret standing in a sable coat, face carved from fury. Daniel advised against allowing her in. Sophia considered. Then she said, "Let her into the front sitting room. Record everything." Margaret entered like a queen forced to use a public entrance. Sophia waited near the fireplace in a black dress, one hand at her side, the other holding a cup of tea. She did not offer Margaret one. "You released a private family document," Margaret said. "You circulated a public lie. That agreement was meant to protect the twins. From their mother? From instability." Sophia set down her cup. "You define instability as any woman you cannot command." Margaret stepped closer. "Do not pretend you care about Clara. I care that 2 children are not born into a contract cage. You care about control." "Yes," Sophia said. Margaret blinked. Sophia continued, "Control over my body, my home, my legal rights, my child's future. The company Arthur asked me to protect. I care very much about control when the alternative is letting you purchase obedience and call it family." Margaret's face flushed. "Arthur made a mistake naming you. Perhaps. But he made it legally. You think a document makes you a Blackwood?" Sophia looked around the sitting room, at the house she had restored while Margaret criticized the curtains, at the marriage she had protected while Nathaniel drifted toward admiration elsewhere, at the family that wanted her gone until her hidden authority became inconvenient. "No," she said. "Your family taught me that being a Blackwood is often nothing to aspire to." Margaret lifted her hand. For one sharp second, Sophia thought the older woman might strike her. The guard stepped forward from the doorway. Margaret lowered her hand. Sophia's voice stayed calm. "Do not come here uninvited again." Margaret's eyes shone with rage. "This is not over." "I know. You will lose something." Sophia looked at her. "Margaret, I already did. That is why you are finding me expensive." Chapter 11. The board hearing took place the following Monday in a room with no flowers. That detail pleased Sophia. Blackwood Atlas's directors gathered around a long glass table beneath recessed lights. No portraits. No family silver. No inherited mythology. Just documents, microphones, and men and women who understood that liability did not care about bloodlines. Sophia attended in person. Nathaniel stood when she entered. He looked thinner than he had 2 weeks earlier, his suit immaculate, his face drawn. For a brief moment, his eyes moved to her stomach. She saw pain there, and longing and shame. She did not let any of it decide her next step. Margaret sat beside family counsel, rigid with contained fury. Clara appeared by video with Priya's son beside her. She looked nervous but steadier than before. Helena Cross opened the proceedings. We will address 4 issues. The proposed payment to Mrs. Blackwood, the prenatal agreement offered to Ms. Voss, the guardian steward provision, and the financing exposure related to Ellery Stone. Margaret's attorney began with polished indignation. He described the $120 million check as a private family settlement. He described Margaret's actions as protective. He described Sophia's legal response as aggressive, premature, and personally motivated. Daniel Rook responded with dates. Dates were less dramatic than indignation and far more lethal. Date of Clara's pregnancy disclosure to Sophia. Date and location of the $120 million check presentation. Date Margaret's office contacted the columnist. Date surveillance was ordered. Date the prenatal agreement was delivered to Clara. Date the board was informed. The timeline made Margaret's benevolence look like choreography. Then Julia Hart presented the funding analysis. The check was drawn from Blackwood legacy liquidity, she said. While technically family office controlled, the account is cross-collateralized in internal stability representations. A private settlement of this scale, connected to succession and marital removal, should have been disclosed before execution. One director asked, "Was the check cashable?" Julia nodded. Yes. So if Mrs. Blackwood had accepted, the account would have lost $120 million. Correct. Potentially affecting corporate representations? Yes. The director looked at Margaret. Without board notice. Margaret's lips thinned. It was a family matter. Helena said, "It became corporate when you used a pledged liquidity source." Next came Clara. Priya guided her through the prenatal agreement. Clara confirmed Margaret had urged her to sign quickly. She confirmed Nathaniel had described it as standard. She confirmed no independent counsel had been provided before Sophia warned her. Nathaniel closed his eyes when Clara said that. Margaret stared straight ahead. Then Helena turned to the guardian steward provision. Mason Vale presented Arthur's instrument, execution history, and legal effect. The directors read in silence. Finally, Helena asked the question Margaret had dreaded. "Mrs. Blackwood, did you know your late husband named Sophia Blackwood as guardian steward?" Margaret's face was stone. "No. Mr. Blackwood?" Helena asked Nathaniel. He swallowed. "No. Mrs. Blackwood," Helena said to Sophia. "Did you know?" Sophia met her gaze. "Yes." Margaret's attorney pounced. "And you concealed it?" Sophia turned to him. "Arthur instructed me not to disclose it unless the triggering conditions became relevant. They became relevant when minor heirs were used as leverage in a governance dispute. Convenient. Legal." The attorney flushed. Nathaniel looked at Sophia. His voice was rough. "Why did my father choose you?" The question was not on the agenda. No one stopped it. Sophia looked at him for a long moment. Because after Dubai, he understood that ambition without restraint could endanger the company. The room tightened. Nathaniel went pale. Margaret whispered, "Sophia." But the door had opened. Helena's eyes sharpened. "Dubai." Daniel placed a sealed file on the table. "We hope not to introduce this unless necessary. However, challenges to Arthur's reasoning make it relevant." Nathaniel looked down. The Dubai file did not need much explanation. An unauthorized side commitment. A hidden guarantee. A potential loss large enough to destabilize a division. Sophia's negotiated unwind. Arthur's subsequent decision to create the guardian steward provision. When Helena finished reading, her expression had changed. Not toward Sophia. Toward Nathaniel. Margaret's face looked carved from ash. The board called a private executive session. Sophia waited in a side room with Daniel. Through the glass, she could see Nathaniel standing alone near the windows. Margaret did not go to him. Clara's video feed had ended. Rebecca was not there. For once, Nathaniel had no woman beside him to absorb the consequence. Daniel said quietly, "Are you all right?" Sophia looked at her husband. "No," she said. "But I am clear." Chapter 12. The board's decision arrived at 6:40. Nathaniel Blackwood would remain interim chief executive for 30 days under restricted authority while a leadership committee reviewed successor options. He lost unilateral control over succession planning, family office coordination, and major financing representations. Margaret was removed from any advisory role connected to trust matters, minor heirs, or family office liquidity tied to corporate stability. Sophia was confirmed as guardian steward under Arthur's instrument, pending any court challenge. Ellery Stone was granted enhanced observation rights. Clara's prenatal agreement was formally disavowed as unauthorized by the company and inappropriate for any corporate-affiliated trust structure. The decision did not destroy Nathaniel. It did something worse for a man raised to inherit command. It supervised him. When the meeting ended, Sophia walked toward the elevator with Daniel. Nathaniel followed. "Sophia." Daniel stopped. Sophia said, "It's fine." Daniel stepped aside but remained close enough to be useful. Nathaniel stood before her, shoulders tense, eyes red around the edges. "I did not know about the surveillance until after." "You still received the report." "I know. And opened it." He flinched. "Yes." The elevator numbers moved slowly above the doors. Nathaniel lowered his voice. "Are you well?" "Medically, yes." "And otherwise?" She looked at him. "You are not entitled to otherwise." Pain crossed his face. "I deserve that." "Yes." He took a breath. "I spoke to Clara. She left the apartment." "Good." "I am arranging independent support." "Through counsel?" "Yes." "Good." He looked down, almost smiling bitterly. "I used to hate when you spoke like that." "Like what?" "Like a verdict." Sophia said nothing. He looked back up. "Now I think I hated it, because you were usually right." The elevator arrived. Sophia did not enter. Nathaniel continued, urgency rising. "I love you." There it was again. This time, not through Daniel. Not written on a card. Spoken in a hallway after a board reduced his power and exposed his shame. Sophia felt the words. She hated that she felt them. "You loved being safe with me," she said. "You loved being understood by me. You loved the version of yourself I helped you maintain. But love that needs another woman's humiliation to feel alive is not love I can live inside." His eyes filled. "I was afraid." "Of what?" "That you saw me too clearly." The answer was honest enough to hurt. Sophia's voice softened, but only slightly. "I did. And Clara did not." "No. She saw what you showed her." He nodded slowly, as if accepting a sentence. "Can I come to the next appointment?" he asked. Sophia's hand moved to her stomach. For a moment, she saw the future as it might have been. Nathaniel beside her, nervous and awed. Margaret pretending restraint. A family repaired before breaking. Children born into complicated love, but love nonetheless. Then she saw Clara in the living room. "The check." Margaret's voice. Nathaniel saying, "This is the cleanest way." "No," she said. He closed his eyes. "Not yet," she added. His eyes opened. She did not offer more. Not yet was not forgiveness. It was a boundary with a door somewhere beyond it, locked from Sophia's side. She stepped into the elevator with Daniel. As the doors closed, Nathaniel remained in the hallway, looking for the first time like a man who understood that access was not a right. Chapter 13. Margaret filed the challenge 3 weeks later. No one was surprised. She contested Arthur's guardian steward provision on grounds of undue influence, lack of full family disclosure, and conflict created by Sophia's marital dispute. The petition was elegant, aggressive, and personally insulting in the way expensive lawyers learned from clients who wanted blood but still needed plausible deniability. Sophia's response was shorter. Arthur was competent. The provision was valid. Margaret's challenge was retaliatory. Discovery should include the Dubai file, family office communications, the $120 million check, surveillance orders, and the prenatal agreement. Margaret withdrew 2 claims within 48 hours. She did not withdraw all. The court hearing took place in a private trust courtroom without cameras. Margaret arrived in black. Sophia arrived in ivory. Nathaniel arrived alone. Clara did not attend but submitted an affidavit confirming Margaret's pressure. That affidavit mattered. Not because Clara had become noble overnight. Because truth often entered the record through frightened people who finally understood silence would not save them. The judge, a gray-haired woman named Allison Reed, read everything with the expression of someone who had seen too many wealthy families mistake trusts for weapons. Margaret's attorney argued first. He described Arthur as vulnerable after illness, Sophia as influential, and the provision as inconsistent with Blackwood family tradition. Judge Reed interrupted. "Counsel, tradition is not law." The attorney recovered poorly. Daniel argued next. He presented Arthur's medical clearances, independent counsel notes, correspondence showing Arthur's concern over governance restraint, and Sophia's documented role in resolving Dubai. He did not dramatize. He did not need to. Then Judge Reed asked Sophia to speak. Sophia stood. Nathaniel looked at her from across the aisle. Margaret did not. The judge said, "Mrs. Blackwood, Did you ask Arthur Blackwood to name you guardian steward? No. Did you conceal the provision for personal advantage? I followed Arthur's instruction that it remain inactive unless triggering conditions arose. Do you seek to control the unborn Blackwood children? Sophia's expression changed for the first time. No, Your Honor. I seek to ensure no adult uses them to control each other. The judge watched her carefully. Including your own child? Especially my own child. Margaret shifted. Sophia continued, voice steady. I have been called cold, calculating, barren, manipulative, and ungrateful. But the record shows that when Clara Voss was asked to sign away rights, I told her to get counsel. When my mother-in-law offered me money to disappear, I preserved the check instead of cashing it. When the board asked about my pregnancy, I disclosed only what was necessary to prevent further lies. I am not asking this court to reward me for being hurt. I am asking it to enforce a document Arthur Blackwood created because he feared exactly this kind of instability. The room was silent. Judge Reed looked at Margaret. Mrs. Margaret Blackwood, do you wish to address the court? Margaret rose slowly. For once, she seemed older than her pearls. My husband should have trusted his family, she said. Judge Reed's voice was neutral. Perhaps he believed he was. The ruling did not come that day. It arrived 1 week later. Arthur's guardian steward provision was upheld. Margaret's challenge was denied in substantial part. Discovery into certain family office actions would proceed separately. Sophia read the decision in her library, with Daniel on the phone and a cup of ginger tea beside her. Outside, snow fell lightly over the townhouse steps. She placed one hand over her stomach and whispered, "We are safe." For the first time in weeks, she cried. Not loudly, not dramatically, just enough to let her body admit it had been carrying more than one life. Chapter 14. Clara gave birth first. 2 boys, 6 weeks early, small and furious, with strong lungs and Nathaniel's gray eyes. Their names were Oliver and Theo Voss. Not Blackwood. The choice caused a private earthquake. Margaret called it an insult. Rebecca called it manipulation. Nathaniel, to his credit, did not call it anything in public. He signed the support agreement, accepted paternity, and attended the neonatal unit under Clara's rules. Sophia sent flowers. Not roses. White tulips. The card said, "Wishing strength and health to you and the boys." Sophia Clara texted a picture of 2 tiny hands curled near each other. "Thank you. They are perfect." Sophia looked at the photo for a long time. She did not feel jealousy. She felt sorrow that adults had nearly turned those hands into legal instruments before they could hold anything. Nathaniel visited Sophia 1 week later with written notice, as required. She received him in the front sitting room. He looked exhausted in a way status could not hide. The twins' early birth had shaken him. The board restrictions had humbled him. Margaret's defeat had isolated him. For the first time since Sophia had known him, Nathaniel seemed unsure who he was without someone's admiration or obedience. "They're very small," he said. Sophia sat across from him in a soft brown dress, her pregnancy now unmistakable. Premature twins often are. "Clara is doing well." "Good." He rubbed his hands together. "She named them Voss." "I heard. My mother is furious." "Your mother survived the fall of several governments at dinner parties. She will survive surnames." A faint smile crossed his face, then disappeared. "I deserved that. It was not an attack. With you, the accurate sentences hurt more." Sophia looked down at her tea. Nathaniel leaned forward. "I am stepping back from day-to-day leadership." She looked up. "The board recommended a professional CEO during review," he said. "I agreed." Sophia studied him. "Why?" "Because if I fought it, I would be proving everyone right." "That has not always stopped you." "No." He looked toward the window. "But I saw Oliver in the incubator, and he was so small. Theo too. They were not heirs. They were just babies. And I realized my mother was already asking about trust structures while Clara was still bleeding." Sophia closed her eyes briefly. "I am sorry," he said. She opened them. He continued, "For bringing Clara into your home. For letting my mother speak to you that way. For not reading what affected women I claimed to love. For turning children into proof that I had not failed." The apology was better than the first one. It was specific. That made it more dangerous. Specific remorse could tempt a wounded person to return to work before the wound closed. Sophia placed her cup down. "Thank you." Hope moved across his face. She stopped it gently. "That does not change the separation." He nodded, but pain tightened his mouth. "I know. Does Clara have adequate support?" "Yes. Independent. Court filed." Good. May I ask about? His eyes moved to her stomach. May I know the baby? Sophia rested one hand over the curve beneath her dress. Eventually, she said. His breath caught. Under legal structure, she added. With consistency. No interference from your mother. No public statements. No using one child to bargain for another. I agree. You agree now. We will put it in writing. He gave a sad smile. Of course. They sat in silence. Not comfortable. Not hostile. Something between endings and beginnings. Before he left, Nathaniel paused at the doorway. Do you know the sex? Sophia looked at him for a long moment. A girl, she said. His face changed completely. Not triumph. Not relief. Wonder, raw and frightened. A girl, he repeated. Yes. He nodded, eyes bright. She will be like you. Sophia's voice softened. I hope she is like herself. Chapter 15. The sale of Blackwood Atlas did not happen all at once. It began as a governance review, became a restructuring, then turned into a strategic split that separated the healthy operating divisions from family-controlled vanity assets. Sophia did not sell the entire empire in one dramatic signature. She did something more lasting. She made it impossible for the family to use the company as a private kingdom. The logistics arm went into a publicly accountable partnership. The real estate division received independent management. The family office lost informal access to corporate liquidity. The foundation was rebuilt with outside trustees. The Blackwood name remained on buildings, but no longer moved money without records. Margaret called it dismemberment. Helena Cross called it modernization. Employees called it overdue. Nathaniel called it painful and did not try to stop it. That, more than any apology, told Sophia he might survive himself. Margaret retreated to the Hudson estate and gave fewer luncheons. Rebecca married a minor tech investor and moved to Palm Beach, where she told people New York had become vulgar. Clara raised Oliver and Theo in a quiet apartment near the park with a nanny she hired herself and a legal agreement no Blackwood could rewrite over tea. Sophia's daughter was born in late spring during a thunderstorm. Labor was long and difficult. Marianne, Sophia's mother, flew in from Boston and held her hand through 12 hours of pain, legal calls muted, all strategy suspended by the ancient work of bringing a child into air. Nathaniel waited outside the hospital suite because Sophia allowed it and because the written agreement said he could. When the baby cried, Sophia cried too. She named her Elise Arthur Blackwood. Arthur for the man who had trusted judgment over blood. Elise for herself, because Sophia had learned that a daughter could inherit not only names, but repaired courage. Nathaniel met Elise the next morning. He washed his hands twice, then sat in the chair beside the bed while Sophia's nurse placed the baby in his arms. His face crumpled at once. Hello, he whispered. Hello, little one. Sophia watched carefully. She did not soften entirely. She did not forget. But she allowed herself to see the truth in front of her, a flawed man holding his daughter like a question he was afraid to answer wrongly. Elise opened one eye and made a tiny offended sound. Nathaniel laughed through tears. Sophia looked away for a moment, not because she was unmoved, but because she had learned not every feeling needed to become a decision. Chapter 16. 1 year later, Sophia stood in the renovated headquarters of the Blackwood Children's Legal Trust and watched Clara's twins try to crawl in opposite directions. Oliver made it under a chair before Clara caught him. Theo slapped both hands on the carpet and shrieked with delight. Elise sat on a blanket near Sophia's feet, solemnly chewing a cloth star with the seriousness of a board chair reviewing evidence. Clara laughed, breathless. They are faster every week. Sophia lifted Elise before she could lunge toward a stack of brochures. That sounds like a governance issue. Clara smiled. She looked healthier now. Still young, still carrying consequences, but no longer arranged as anyone's ornament. Her hair was shorter. Her clothes were simpler. Her eyes clearer. The trust they stood inside offered legal support to expectant mothers and high-control families, employees involved in workplace power abuse, and women pressured into private agreements they did not understand. It was funded partly by penalties recovered from the Blackwood Legacy account and partly by Sophia's own foundation. Margaret hated it. That was not the reason Sophia built it. It was only a pleasant side effect. Nathaniel arrived at noon for the children's first joint family mediation review. He brought no flowers, no gifts too large for the occasion, no entourage. Just a small stuffed rabbit for Elise and 2 board books for the twins. Clara watched him carefully as he greeted the boys. Sophia watched him carefully as he greeted Elise. Careful was the shape of their family now. Not warm in the old way. Not whole in the traditional way. But honest enough to keep children from paying for adult vanity. During the meeting, Nathaniel listened more than he spoke. When Clara corrected him about the twins' feeding schedule, he wrote it down. When Sophia said Elise became overstimulated after long visits, he asked what helped. When the mediator asked about holidays, Margaret's name entered the room like a cold draft. Nathaniel said, "My mother will not have unsupervised access." Both women looked at him. He looked back, tired but steady. "I know what she does with rooms when no one stops her." It was not enough to erase the past. It was enough to protect a weekend. After the meeting, Clara left with the twins. Nathaniel knelt to kiss Elise's forehead, then stood before Sophia. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" "For not letting my worst year become their childhood." Sophia looked at Elise, who had fallen asleep against her shoulder. "I did it for them," she said. "I know." He paused. "And maybe a little for who you are." Sophia did not answer. The old Nathaniel would have pushed. The newer one let silence stand. After he left, Sophia walked through the trust offices with Elise sleeping in her arms. On one wall hung no Blackwood portraits, no male founders, no family crests. Instead, there were framed copies of plain language rights guides, photographs of women leaving courthouses with their shoulders back, and a small brass plaque near the entrance. Dignity cannot be purchased from the person who still has it. Marian had wanted the quote larger. Sophia had refused. Some truths work better when people had to step closer to read them. Chapter 17. On Elise's second birthday, Margaret Blackwood sent a gift. It arrived in a white box tied with silver ribbon. Inside was a diamond bracelet small enough for a child and inappropriate enough for Margaret. The card read, "For my granddaughter. Blood remembers." Sophia looked at the bracelet for a long time. Then she sent it back with a note. "Elise is learning hands before ornaments." Nathaniel called 2 hours later, trying and failing not to laugh. "Mother is furious," he said. "That will be familiar for her. She said you insulted the bloodline." "I insulted a bracelet. With you, objects often stand trial." Sophia smiled despite herself. There were moments like that now. Brief, human, not enough to rebuild a marriage and not trying to. They had become co-parents with history. It was not a romance. It was not a tragedy either. It was work. That evening, after the birthday guests left, Sophia sat on the floor of the nursery while Elise stacked wooden blocks into a leaning tower. The city outside glowed with early summer light. Marian sat in the rocking chair, shoes off, looking both elegant and exhausted. "You look peaceful," her mother said. Sophia placed another block on Elise's tower. It fell immediately. Elise gasped, then laughed. "I look tired." "Peace often does." Sophia leaned back against the sofa. "Do you ever regret not telling the Blackwoods everything from the beginning?" Marian asked. "About Ellery Stone? About who you were?" Sophia watched Elise try again, this time placing the widest block on top of the smallest. "Sometimes," she said. "But I also think they showed me who they were because they believed I had nothing." Marian nodded slowly. "Useful information. Expensive information. Most useful information is." Sophia looked toward the window. For years, she had thought discretion meant safety. Then she learned discretion could become a room where other people wrote your role because you refused to announce your power. Now she understood the balance differently. Power did not need to be loud, but it did need to be accessible when dignity was under attack. Elise crawled into her lap, holding a block against Sophia's chest like an offering. Sophia kissed her hair. "I do not want her to grow up thinking silence is grace," Sophia said. Marianne's voice softened. "Then teach her silence is a tool, not a home." Sophia held her daughter closer. That was exactly it. Chapter 18. 3 years after Margaret placed the check on the tea table, Sophia returned to the Blackwood estate for Arthur's memorial dedication. She came because the company had endowed a governance ethics center in Arthur's name, and because Elise was old enough to point at portraits and ask why everyone looked so serious. Clara came too, with Oliver and Theo in matching navy sweaters. Nathaniel arrived separately, carrying Elise's coat because she had decided halfway up the steps that coats were unacceptable. Margaret received them in the grand hall. She had aged. Not softened exactly. Margaret Blackwood did not soften. But the sharpness had become less theatrical, more contained. She looked at the children first, as if counting blood, then stopped herself with visible effort. "Sophia," she said. "Margaret." Clara's shoulders stiffened. Sophia noticed. Nathaniel did too. "Clara," Margaret said after a pause. The boys look well. Clara held Theo's hand. They are. No darling. No future of the family. No ownership language dressed as affection. Progress sometimes arrived wearing discomfort. During the dedication, Helena Cross spoke about Arthur's late-life commitment to governance restraint. Nathaniel spoke briefly and honestly about learning that legacy, without accountability, became entitlement. Sophia did not speak. She had been asked. She declined. Some victories did not need a microphone. Afterward, Margaret found her near the winter garden. Elise was with Nathaniel, showing him a leaf she considered important. Oliver and Theo chased each other along the path while Clara pretended not to panic. Margaret stood beside Sophia in silence for almost a minute. Then she said, "I was wrong." Sophia looked at her. Margaret kept her eyes on the children. "Not about everything. Of course not. Do not mock me. I am recognizing your limits." Margaret's mouth tightened, but she let it pass. "I was wrong to offer the check." The words were stiff, but they existed. Sophia waited. Margaret continued, "I was wrong to call you Baron. That sentence cost more." Sophia felt the old pain move once, then settle. "Yes," she said. "You were." Margaret looked at her then. "I thought family could be protected by control. It can be preserved by boundaries. You sound like Arthur. He had his moments." Margaret almost smiled. "Almost." "Elise has your eyes," she said. Sophia glanced toward her daughter. Elise was now making Nathaniel hold 3 leaves and 1 pebble. "She has her own," Sophia said. Margaret nodded faintly, remembering perhaps that she had heard that correction before. The children ran past, laughing. For a moment, the estate did not feel like a kingdom or a battlefield. Just an old house filled with small loud lives that had no idea how hard the adults had fought not to make them inherit the worst of it. Sophia watched them and felt something unclench. Not forgiveness exactly. Not forgetting. Something steadier. Proof that a woman could survive being priced, judged, replaced, doubted, and still refused to pass the wound forward. Chapter 19. That night, Sophia returned to her townhouse with Elise asleep in the back seat. The city was soft with rain. Street lights blurred against the windows. Nathaniel had offered to drive behind them, then accepted when Sophia said security was enough. He was learning. Slowly, unevenly, but learning that love for a child did not give him automatic access to the mother. At home, Sophia carried Elise upstairs, changed her into pajamas without fully waking her, and tucked her beneath a quilt embroidered with tiny moons. On the nursery shelf sat the wooden block Elise had once offered like a medal. Sophia had kept it there because motherhood had made her sentimental in ways she no longer mocked. Downstairs, she made tea and opened the old file box Daniel had returned after the final trust matters closed. Inside lay a copy of the $120 million check. Cancelled. Never cashed. Preserved as evidence. Sophia held it under the lamp. Once, that check had been meant to measure her worth. To price her silence. To tell her that a wife without visible power could be removed if the number was large enough and the room cold enough. Now it looked almost small. Paper. Ink. A signature from a woman who had mistaken money for destiny. Sophia placed the copy into a new folder labeled History. Not pain. Not proof. History. She walked to the window with her tea. The townhouse was quiet around her. The kind of quiet she had once confused with waiting. Now it meant safety. Choice. A life where no one could walk in with a check and mistake her stillness for surrender. Her phone buzzed. A message from Clara. The boys are still talking about Elise's leaf collection. Thank you for today. Sophia smiled and replied. Tell them Elise has declared herself curator. Then a message from Nathaniel. Thank you for letting me be there. Sophia read it, waited a moment, and answered. Keep earning it. His reply came after several minutes. I will. She set the phone down. The rain continued. Upstairs, Elise slept. Somewhere across the city, Clara was probably trying to convince twins that bedtime was real. Nathaniel was perhaps sitting alone with the weight of what he had lost and the responsibility of what remained. Margaret was in her estate with her portraits and maybe a little less certainty. Sophia did not need all of them healed to be whole. That was the lesson. For years, the Blackwoods believed she was valuable because she was graceful, useful because she was quiet, replaceable because she had not produced an heir on their schedule. Then the secretary became pregnant with twins. The mother-in-law wrote a $120 million check, and everyone discovered the woman they tried to buy was the only one who knew how to keep the children, the company, and herself from becoming property. Sophia lifted her tea and looked at the rain-bright city. She had not disappeared. She had become impossible to remove. Chapter 20. Margaret's final mistake was believing reputation could still be repaired with a ballroom. 6 months after Arthur's memorial, she hosted the Blackwood Winter Benefit at the Hudson Estate. Officially, it raised money for early childhood medical care. Unofficially, it was Margaret's attempt to reclaim the family image after years of headlines had reduced her from matriarch to cautionary tale. The invitation was embossed, severe, and personally addressed to Sophia. Sophia almost declined. Then Elise found the envelope on the breakfast table, slapped one small hand over the Blackwood crest, and declared it bird mail. Sophia took that as a sign not from fate, because she distrusted fate, but from comedy, which she trusted more. She attended. Not alone. She arrived with Clara, Oliver, Theo, Elise, and Nathaniel, all in one car by deliberate agreement. The gossip began before they reached the front steps. Cameras flashed. Guests turned. Margaret stood at the entrance in dark emerald silk, her expression fixed so firmly into welcome that it almost became pain. Clara stepped out first, holding Theo's hand. Oliver clung to Nathaniel's coat. Sophia lifted Elise from her car seat and settled the little girl against her hip. Elise wore a navy velvet dress and white tights, one shoe already threatening rebellion. Nathaniel offered Sophia his arm. She looked at it. He smiled faintly. For the steps. Not symbolism. Good, she said, and took it for exactly 8 seconds. The cameras caught it anyway. Margaret watched them approach. Her eyes moved over Clara, the twins, Nathaniel, Sophia, and Elise. Once, that arrangement would have horrified her because it could not be controlled into a clean family portrait. Now it was the only arrangement that did not lie. Welcome, Margaret said. Clara held Theo a little closer. Sophia noticed. So did Margaret. For one brief second, the older woman looked as if she might say something territorial, something about blood, name, heirs, or family. Then her gaze shifted to Sophia, and memory did its work. The children look lovely, Margaret said instead. Sophia nodded. They dressed themselves emotionally, if not technically. Nathaniel coughed to hide a laugh. Inside, the estate had been transformed into candlelight, white flowers, violin music, and expensive repentance. The donor wall displayed photographs from the Children's Legal Trust, the neonatal unit, and the new family advocacy clinic. Sophia saw her own foundation listed as a principal sponsor. She had approved the grant. She had not known Margaret would place the name so prominently. Clara saw it too. She put your foundation first. She put the largest donor first, Sophia said. Still, Sophia admitted. The evening was almost peaceful until Rebecca arrived. Rebecca Blackwood, now Rebecca Blackwood Crane, swept into the ballroom in silver satin and resentment. Her husband trailed behind her carrying a drink and the expression of a man who had learned to survive by agreeing with furniture. Rebecca kissed Margaret's cheek, ignored Clara, and looked at Sophia with a smile sharp enough to cut ribbon. Sophia, she said. How moving. The whole modern family on parade. Nathaniel's face tightened. Rebecca. Sophia shifted Elise to her other hip. Good evening. Rebecca glanced at Elise. She does look like a Blackwood. She looks like herself. You always say that. People keep needing to hear it. Clara turned away to guide the twins toward the children's room, but Rebecca was not finished. And Clara, she said brightly, how generous of you to come. Some women would find it difficult to attend an event hosted by the family. They tried to enter through the side door. Clara went still. Nathaniel stepped forward. Stop. Rebecca lifted her brows. What? We are all pretending truth is healing now. I thought honesty was the new family hobby. The nearest guests pretended to admire a floral arrangement while listening with their entire bodies. Sophia handed Elise to Nathaniel. Hold her. He obeyed immediately. Sophia walked to Rebecca. Not quickly, not dramatically, calmly, which made the movement more frightening to anyone who remembered the old scandals. Rebecca, she said. Clara did not enter through a side door. Your brother opened it, your mother furnished the room, and you laughed from the hallway. Rebecca flushed. How dare you? Easily. Several guests looked down. Rebecca's eyes flashed. You enjoy humiliating this family. Sophia looked around the ballroom. No. I enjoy accuracy. Humiliation is what happens when people confuse exposure with invention. Margaret appeared behind Rebecca, face pale. Enough. For once, the word was directed at her daughter. Rebecca turned. Mother? Margaret's voice was low. Enough. The two women stared at each other. Something old passed between them. Years of Margaret teaching Rebecca cruelty as a survival tool, then discovering cruelty, did not know when to stop. Rebecca laughed bitterly. So now Sophia runs the room too. Sophia answered before Margaret could. No. The room is finally learning consequences. Rebecca looked as if she wanted to say more, but her husband's hand touched her elbow and perhaps, for once, she read the air correctly. She walked away, silver dress flashing beneath the chandeliers. Clara had not moved. Sophia turned to her. Are you all right? Clara swallowed. Yes. She was lying, but not completely. Nathaniel handed Elise back to Sophia and looked toward his sister. I will speak to her. Later, Sophia said. Tonight is not about Rebecca. The program began 15 minutes later. Margaret stepped onto the small stage. The room quieted. She stood beneath the Blackwood crest, surrounded by flowers, donors, cameras, and every ghost she had spent years arranging into silence. Her prepared remarks sat on the lectern. She did not look at them. For many years, Margaret began, I believed family legacy meant protection of a name. The room grew still. Nathaniel, standing beside Sophia, looked up sharply. Margaret continued, I confused control with protection. I confused silence with dignity. I confused blood with responsibility. Those mistakes harmed people in this room. Rebecca, near the side wall, stared at her mother in disbelief. Margaret's hands tightened around the lectern. This benefit supports legal and medical advocacy for mothers, children, and families navigating power imbalances. It exists because the Blackwood family learned, publicly and painfully, that money without accountability becomes a threat disguised as care. No one breathed loudly. Margaret looked toward Clara first. Ms. Voss, I failed to respect your independence as a mother. Clara's eyes widened. Then Margaret looked at Sophia. Sophia, I failed to respect your dignity as a wife, a mother, and a steward of this family when we did not deserve one. The apology was not warm. Margaret was not warm. But it was public, specific, and spoken without bargaining. That mattered. Sophia did not smile. She nodded once. Margaret finished the speech in a voice that shook only near the end. Applause followed, uncertain at first, then stronger. Some people applauded courage. Others applauded discomfort ending. Either way, the room changed. Later, near the winter garden, Margaret approached Sophia alone. I imagine you think that was overdue, she said. Yes. Margaret's mouth tightened. You could pretend otherwise. I could. You will not. No. For a moment, Margaret looked almost amused. Then she said, Arthur would have enjoyed this version of you. Sophia looked through the glass at Elise pressing her palms against the cold pane, trying to see snow in the dark. This version cost too much to be entertainment. Margaret nodded faintly. Yes, I suppose it did. They stood in silence, not reconciled, not enemies in the old way. Two women who had loved power differently, one through control and one through restraint, both learning that children remembered the rooms adults built around them. Chapter 21 The Blackwood Children's Legal Trust opened its second office the following spring. It occupied 2 floors of a renovated brick building near the courthouse. No marble lobby, no intimidating portraits, no receptionist trained to make frightened women feel underdressed. The walls were warm white. The chairs were comfortable. The consultation rooms had glass panels in the doors, so no conversation felt like a trap. Sophia walked through before the ribbon ceremony with Elise on one side and Clara on the other. Oliver and Theo ran ahead under Nathaniel's supervision, though supervision mostly meant he followed them with the expression of a man negotiating with weather. No running, Nathaniel called. Theo ran faster. Oliver shouted, We are walking quickly. Clara covered her mouth to hide a laugh. They learned that from your legal team. Sophia looked at the boys. Plausible deniability is not a toddler value. Elise tugged her mother's hand. What is deniability? Nathaniel looked alarmed. Please do not answer that yet. Sophia smiled. It means adults making things too complicated. Elise considered this, then nodded as if adults had disappointed her expectations exactly. The ceremony was small by Blackwood standards and large by Sophia's. There were judges, social workers, nurses, legal aid attorneys, trustees, former clients, and donors who had learned that Sophia preferred direct questions to flattery. Margaret attended and sat in the second row, which everyone understood as progress. Rebecca did not attend, which everyone understood as peace. Nathaniel spoke briefly on behalf of the family foundation. He did not mention legacy. He mentioned responsibility. This trust exists because children should not be born into contracts designed by fear, he said. It exists because parents with power must be held to standards higher than intention. It exists because support means nothing if it comes with invisible chains. He looked toward Clara, then Sophia. Some lessons are learned too late to prevent harm. The only honorable thing left is to prevent repetition. It was a good speech because it did not ask the audience to forgive him. Clara squeezed Theo's shoulder. Sophia held Elise's hand. Margaret looked at her son with an expression Sophia had never seen on her before. Not pride exactly, but recognition that humility had finally entered the bloodline and found somewhere to sit. Then Sophia stepped to the microphone. She had not planned to speak long. She looked at the front row, Clara with the twins, Nathaniel with Elise's sweater folded over his arm, Margaret sitting alone but present, Marianne smiling from the aisle, Daniel Rook holding a folder because he apparently did not know how to attend anything without paper. Sophia began. The first office of this trust was built from a crisis. This second one is built from a decision. The room quieted. A crisis can reveal harm. A decision determines whether harm becomes tradition. She looked toward the hallway, where framed signs listed services in plain language. Emergency counsel, prenatal rights review, coercive contract support, family office pressure response, employee pregnancy protection. When people talk about powerful families, they often talk about inheritance as if children receive only money, names, houses, or shares. But children inherit atmosphere too. They inherit the way adults speak when they are angry. They inherit what is forgiven without repair. They inherit which doors are locked, which stories are hidden, and which people are treated as removable. Margaret looked down at her hands. Sophia continued, voice steady. There was a night when I was offered a great deal of money to disappear. At the time, that check felt like an ending. It was not. It was a mirror. It showed me what happens when a family protects image more fiercely than people. No one moved. I kept the check, she said. Not because I wanted to remember the insult, but because evidence matters. Later, I realized evidence is not only for court. Sometimes evidence is what a woman keeps so she can prove to herself that she did not imagine the moment someone tried to price her dignity. Clara's eyes filled. Marianne pressed a tissue into her palm without looking away from Sophia. This trust cannot make every family kind. It cannot make every powerful person honest. It cannot save every marriage, and it should not try. What it can do is give people language, counsel, records, and exits. It can tell a frightened mother not to sign before she understands. It can tell a wife that silence is not grace when silence is being purchased. It can tell a father that support is not ownership. Nathaniel lowered his eyes. Most importantly, Sophia said, it can tell children, before they are old enough to understand any of this, that the adults around them chose to stop passing harm forward. The applause was quiet at first, then full. Elise clapped because everyone else did. Oliver and Theo clapped because clapping was loud. Nathaniel stood. Clara stood. Margaret stood last, but she stood. After the ribbon was cut, Sophia walked into the first consultation room alone. It had a round table, 3 chairs, a box of tissues, a carafe of water, and a window facing the courthouse. Simple. Useful. Unimpressive in the best possible way. Nathaniel found her there a few minutes later. That was beautiful, he said. It was accurate. Also beautiful. She allowed that with a small tilt of her head. He stepped inside but stayed near the door. He had learned not to enter her space without reading her face first. Elise wants to show you the children's corner, he said. She says it needs more books about astronauts. She is probably right. She usually is. Sophia looked at him then. There had been a time when that easy sentence from him would have cracked her open. Now it simply landed somewhere gentle, not dangerous. Nathaniel said, I know we are not going back. Sophia appreciated that he said it plainly. No, she said. We are not. He nodded. I also know I get to be here because you built rules strong enough to survive me. That is one way to phrase it. A true one. She looked through the window at the courthouse steps. A young woman stood outside with a folder pressed to her chest, speaking to one of the trust intake attorneys. Her face looked frightened and hopeful in equal measure. Sophia knew that expression. She had worn a more expensive version of it once. Rules are not the opposite of love, Sophia said. Sometimes they are what make love safe enough to remain. Nathaniel absorbed that quietly. Then Elise burst into the room holding a picture book upside down. Mom, astronauts. The conversation ended, as many important adult conversations did now, because a child had a more urgent agenda. Sophia lifted Elise into her arms and followed her to the children's corner. Oliver and Theo were already there, arguing over a wooden rocket. Clara sat on the carpet beside them, laughing. Nathaniel leaned against the doorway. Margaret watched from the hall, not entering, not commanding, simply present. For a second, Sophia saw the whole strange shape of the life after the check. Not the life she would have chosen before betrayal. Not the family portrait anyone could have designed cleanly. But a life with doors, records, apologies, boundaries, children who knew laughter before legacy, and women who had stopped letting powerful rooms define their worth. That was enough. More than enough. Subscribe for more stories about betrayal, hidden power, and the quiet moment a woman refuses to be bought.